In a role-playing game, the character named Ako asks Rusian to marry her. Unfortunately, Rusian flatly refuses. Ako then asks why Rusian turned her down. Rusian explains that he has decided never to fall in love again. Ako understands but continues to insist on marrying him. Rusian wonders if Ako is even listening to what he just said. Ako assures him that she is listening. That's why she is being so bold. She believes that if Rusian marries her, it will be more enjoyable. Rusian is puzzled by Ako's confidence but still declines. At that moment, the Alley Cat Guild is in action defeating mobs. Their members include Rusian, Shmuin, Ako, and the guild master Apricot. Rusian prepares to attack with his sword. Fortunately, the shield he carries deflects 2 arrows shot by enemies. Rusian signals Schwein to attack. Schwein leaps and slashes his sword at the 2 archers, making them disappear instantly. Meanwhile, Rusian faces one mob but is soon overwhelmed and knocked back. Seeing this, Ako quickly heals him excessively, causing 3 enemies to surround her. Terrified, Ako is about to be attacked when Rusian suddenly strikes the mobs, telling Ako to retreat while healing him. Unexpectedly, the number of mobs in front of Rusian increases. He calls out to Apricot for help. Apricot channels power through her staff, unleashing a massive fireball toward the mobs attacking Rusian. The fireball incinerates all the mobs instantly. Ako praises Apricot for turning all the mobs into ashes. Schwein wonders how many enhancement items Apricot used on her staff to annihilate all the mobs. Apricot replies that she only used magic-boosting items, and if you buy 10, you get 1 free. Unfortunately, because Apricot arrived late, Rusian became a casualty. Ako quickly revives Rusian with her healing power. As Rusian regains consciousness, Ako hugs him and apologizes. Rusian says it's okay, especially since their mission is complete. Ako thanks him and expresses her love for him. That night, the players log off the game. The next morning at school, Hideki, who plays the character Rusian, announces to his friends that he has a wife. So remarks that Hideki changes wives every 3 months. Ryu asks if Hideki means a waifu. Takumi inquires if there are any anime recommendations for that season. Hideki suggests the historical anime Dogra Magra. So calls Hideki a true maniac, and Takumi even dubs him an open otaku. Hideki doesn't mind as he still enjoys it. Suddenly, Akane calls Otakus disgusting. Nanako tries to calm Akane down. Hideki explains that there are various kinds of otakus like liquor otakus, flower otakus, and others around the world. Akane insists that regardless, Hideki is still disgusting. Hideki's friends agree with her. Hideki can't believe how harsh his 3 friends are. Shortly after, their teacher, Yui, announces that there will be a morning assembly and asks all students to head to the gym. All the students hurry to the gym. While in the hallway, So tells his friends that Maeda from class 3 confessed to a female student and was flatly rejected. So suggests that Hideki might be a good match for a short, twin-tailed girl like Akane. Hideki says that if Akane were a tsundere, someone who is initially cold but gradually shows affection, he might be interested. But in reality, Akane is just stone cold. Akane turns and threatens to seriously hurt Hideki later. Hideki is startled and stops in his tracks, accidentally bumping into a girl from another class, Ako. Hideki quickly apologizes and a shy Ako runs away. During the assembly in the gym, Hideki steals glances at Ako, who turns away whenever she notices him looking. That morning, the student council president, Kyo, welcomes the students at the opening ceremony. After school, Hideki quickly returned to playing his online game. The game Hideki and others played was an online RPG called Legendary Age, or LEI for short. While some features required payment, it was free to play, attracting many players who could explore the same world simultaneously. At that moment, Hideki was controlling his in-game character, Rusian, battling mobs. He alerted his guildmates to prepare for an attack. However, his 3 friends were engrossed in conversation, leaving Rusian to fend off the mobs alone. Ako shared with Schwein and Apricot that Rusian had given her a ring, claiming it would boost her resistance. Meanwhile, Rusian was defeated by the mobs due to his friends' inattentiveness. Later, Rusian and his friends gathered at a cafe. Ako asked how Rusian was doing. He replied that he wasn't okay, and that most of it was Ako's fault. She couldn't attack properly, heal the mobs instead, and was too busy chatting. Rusian mentioned that he died multiple times because of Ako's mistakes. Ako apologized, noting that fortunately, Rusian's level was high enough to mitigate the impact. She then clung to Rusian's arm. Schwein pointed out that tanking was the armor mate's job, so even if Rusian died, it wouldn't affect him. Rusian retorted that if their attacker were more competent, there wouldn't be any issues. Apricot mentioned she could eliminate everything as long as she had expensive cash items to enhance her magic. Schwein and Rusien jokingly called her a pay-to-win player. A year had passed since Rusien and Schwein, Apricot, and Aiko formed the Alley Cat Guild. They'd experienced many adventures together, growing close and enjoying each other's company. Aiko was Rusien's in-game wife. Although their marriage was just within the game, Rusien couldn't refuse her persistent proposals. In reality, Hideki struggled to interact with girls, yet in the game he had a wife. Aiko began talking to herself, and Apricot commented that Aiko and Rusien seemed inseparable that day. Rusien explained it was because Aiko wouldn't let go of him. Schwein teased them, calling them a new couple. Rusien emphasized that it was just a game, not real life. Schwein mused that perhaps Rusien couldn't get married in real life, so he sought solace in the game. Rusien was offended by Schwein's remark. Aiko interjected, suggesting that Schwein should just die, stating that normies should perish, and that associating with them brought bad luck. She believed such people were a blight on the world. Schwein clarified that he wasn't implying that and wasn't interested in romance. Rusien gently reminded Aiko not to project her disdain for normies onto their friends. Suddenly, Aiko lamented that Rusien had rejected her feelings repeatedly, causing her stress and shortening her lifespan. She mentioned proposing 10 times and being rejected each time, wondering why Rusien was so unwilling to marry her. Rusien suggested they revisit the beginning of their conversation. Aiko apologized and pleaded with Rusien not to divorce her. Schwein wondered why Rusien didn't just accept Aiko's proposal. Rusien explained that in-game marriage wasn't something he favored, especially since it was just a game, not reality. Schwein teased that perhaps Rusien couldn't marry in real life, so he sought refuge in the game. Rusien was irked by Schwein's comment. Aiko then revealed that Rusien had previously proposed to someone in Legendary Age. Rusien was surprised Aiko divulged that information. Apricot urged him to share more. Rusien recounted that he once confessed his love to a female character in-game, only to be flatly rejected. To his shock, the girl revealed she was actually an older man in real life, just curious about playing an online game. Since then, Rusien had been wary of online relationships. Hideki had learned his lesson. He would never trust that a girl in an online game was actually a girl again. Hearing his story, Schwein and Apricot burst into laughter. Apricot even joked that Rusien's past was dark, but still a memorable part of his teenage years. Rusien couldn't help but regret it. After all, the girl he confessed to was really cute, had great taste in gear, and was practically a role model for female characters. That experience left him so traumatized that he quit his previous guild and played solo for almost a year. Eventually, he came to a conclusion. As long as a character looked cute, he would accept it, even if the player behind it was actually a guy in real life. What mattered was that the cuteness made his gaming experience enjoyable. Aiko then asked if Rusien was mad at her for revealing his past. Rusien said it was fine. It was just something that happened online. Aiko then told him she truly loved him. Hideki was taken aback but quickly calmed himself to avoid getting too caught up in his feelings. Apricot suddenly realized why Rusien had been rejecting Aiko all this time. But Rusien insisted that it had nothing to do with real life. Aiko was Aiko in the game. Aiko then blurted out that she was actually a bookworm girl in real life. Schwein was confused as to why Aiko would admit something like that in a public chat. Even Rusien agreed it was a bit too much. Then out of nowhere, Apricot declared that she was a high school girl. Hearing that, Rusien refused to believe it, especially since Apricot used high-end cash items. Schwein and Aiko also didn't buy it. To prove it, Apricot suggested they meet up offline for the first ever in-person gathering of the Alley Cat Guild. That day, the members of the Alley Cat Guild gathered near the train station. Hideki messaged the others, letting them know he was standing by a large tree in front of the station. Not long after, a girl approached him and called out Rusien. Shocked, Hideki hesitantly admitted that he was indeed Rusien. The girl introduced herself as Aiko. Seeing the real Aiko for the first time, Hideki was completely stunned. Meanwhile, Aiko, realizing that the guy in front of her was really Rusien, got so excited that she immediately clung to him. Hideki quickly told Aiko to stop calling him Rusien in public. Suddenly, Akane appeared and asked if Hideki was Rusien. Hideki was shocked. Akane was also a guild member. Aiko asked if the two of them knew each other, but before they could answer, Kyo showed up and greeted them. Akane immediately called Kyo student council president, but Kyo corrected her, saying that at that moment, she wasn't the student council president, she was the guild master of Alley Cat Apricot. Kyo instantly recognized Rusien and Aiko, who was still clinging to him. That meant Akane was actually Schwein. Akane quickly protested, telling them not to call her Schwein in real life. The group then headed to a cafe for their first offline guild meeting. Ako was overjoyed to meet Rusian in real life, so much so that she kept touching his face. Kyo took charge of the introductions. She revealed that she was a second-year student at Megasaki High School and the student council president there. Even though they had all been close online, this was their first time meeting in person. Through good times and bad, they had always enjoyed playing together. Next, Akane introduced herself as a first year at Megasaki High. Kyo understood why Akane was embarrassed to say her in-game name out loud. After all, Schwein was German for pig. No girl would want to introduce herself as pig. It turned out that Akane had chosen the name Schwein without knowing its meaning. She just thought it sounded cool. She then blamed Kyo for not telling her sooner. Kyo had always assumed it was just a joke. In the end, Akane begrudgingly accepted the name Schwein but warned everyone, if anyone called her pig, she would chop them into pieces. Hideki had introduced himself as Rusian, and it turned out that saying his character name out loud was pretty embarrassing. He introduced himself as a first-year student at the same high school as Kyo. He also admitted that he didn't participate in any extracurricular activities, had no particular talents, and that his only hobby was playing online games. Next, Ako introduced herself, saying that she was also a first-year student at the same high school as everyone else. To everyone's surprise, her in-game character name was the same as her real name. Akane and Hideki were both shocked that someone would actually use their real name for a game character. Ako admitted that she didn't join any extracurricular activities and didn't have any friends at school. In fact, she even mentioned that sometimes when she went to school, she became the center of attention. Everyone was surprised to hear that. Hideki reassured her, saying that all of them were her friends. Ako was grateful and said she was really happy to have friends she could talk to. Hideki then brought up that Akane was actually quite popular since she was confessed to by a third-year student the other day. Ako immediately called Akane a pleb and Kyo agreed. Akane admitted that she rejected the confession because she had no interest in dating anyone. Hideki then asked if Maeda, the guy who was popular among the girls, wasn't her type. Akane reasoned that if she had a boyfriend, she would have less time to play online games. Akane then turned the question around and asked Hideki if he would reject someone if they confessed to him. Kyo and Ako immediately responded that of course he would. Hideki said that they were all way too honest. Ako then shared her idea on how to solve this issue. She suggested that Akane could just get married in the game just like Ako and Rusian did, so she wouldn't lose any gaming time and could still be with the person she loved. Akane found the idea disgusting. Meanwhile, Hideki still couldn't fully grasp the fact that the cute girl standing in front of him was actually his in-game wife. That day, the members of the Alley Cat Guild gathered offline for the first time at a cafe. After introducing themselves, they continued chatting casually. They all just found out that their guild master was actually the student council president at their school. Akane mentioned that Kyo was actually the daughter of their school principal. Kyo then revealed that her father was also the owner of the school. Hideki commented that Kyo must be rich, but Kyo disagreed, saying that her family only owned the school and a few companies. Akane understood why Kyo spent so much money buying in-game items. Her family was wealthy. However, Kyo clarified that the money she used to buy items was her own. She did initially ask her parents for capital, but she had already paid them back in full. Suddenly, Ako blurted out that people with such bright futures should just die. Hideki quickly snapped her out of it and Ako apologized, saying she got carried away. Kyo explained that her household had very strict rules, and her parents even decided who was suitable to be her friend. However, she worked hard to convince them to let her play online games, and thanks to that, she was able to meet everyone in the guild. Kyo admitted that she had no friends in the real world. Hearing this, Ako immediately cheered her up, saying they should fight together to take down all the so-called normal people. They both felt like kindred spirits. Seeing their growing bond made Akane feel a pang in her chest. Even Hideki had never wished for such a close friendship handshake. They then continued their conversation about online games. Akane believed that the most important factor in online battles was having a strong weapon, and that spending money to upgrade armor was inefficient. However, Hideki argued that armor was actually more crucial since choosing armor was much more complicated than picking a weapon. Akane stood by her opinion, saying it was better to level up their strength and grind at slightly higher level locations, but Hideki thought that would be too painful. The two kept debating until Kyo stepped in and suggested a better method than either of theirs. But instead of listening, Akane and Hideki told their rich player guildmate to stay out of it. Ako said that if she were to spend money, she would rather buy clothes so she could just let everything go and allow herself to be defeated. Of course, Hideki and Ako didn't agree with her at all. Kyo pointed out that since Ako was their healer, she also agreed that improving defense was important. Unfortunately, Rusian always ended up dead before Ako could heal him. Hideki argued that since Rusian was their main tank, he could take care of himself. He even joked that their healer was unreliable, which is why armor was important. Akane and Kyo had no counter-argument, so the discussion ended there. After leaving the cafe, Hideki apologized for initially assuming that everyone in the guild was male. Kyo was surprised, pointing out that she had mentioned it in the game, but Hideki hadn't believed her. Akane even remarked that Hideki's face instantly darkened when he saw them in person. Hideki had always thought that the game and real life were separate, but he realized that he genuinely enjoyed meeting everyone. He also came to understand that his in-game friends were actually impressive in real life as well. Akane immediately cringed at his words, calling them disgusting. Whether in-game or in real life, Akane's reactions were always the same. Kyo also thought that Rusian was just as cold toward girls in real life as he was online. Akane warned Hideki that she wouldn't forgive him if he acted overly familiar with her at school. Seeing how close Hideki and Akane seemed, Ako quickly clung to Hideki. Akane reassured her not to be jealous, saying she had no intention of stealing Ako's husband. After that, they all went their separate ways. As Hideki walked with Ako, she asked him if he had initially thought she was a guy too. Hideki admitted that he had actually thought she was an old man. Ako was shocked. She had told him she was a girl, so why hadn't he believed her? And why had he accepted her marriage proposal if that was what he thought? According to Hideki, even if Ako were a guy, it wouldn't matter to him. That statement shocked Ako. Hideki didn't mean it the way Ako thought, since the game and real life were two different worlds. Even if Ako was a guy in real life, in the game, Ako was still Ako. Ako then said that meant Hideki didn't care about age, gender, or anything else and liked her simply because he liked her. Hideki admitted it. Ako was delighted and said she wanted to be with Hideki because he was Rusian. She'd also said that even if Rusian wasn't a guy her age or someone different from what she imagined, she would still truly love him. Hideki thanked Ako, and for a moment, he almost got carried away, but he quickly reminded himself that the game and reality were different. He then urged Ako to head home since it was getting dark. That night, Hideki went back to playing online games. Rusian managed to defeat the enemies and Apricot and Schwein praised him. Rusian felt like playing the game was just as fun as before. Schwein mentioned that Ako's healing was still a bit slow, but he didn't mind. Apricot reassured Ako that sometimes, no matter how hard they tried, they wouldn't get results. Rusian also told Ako not to worry too much. At worst, he'd just lose some EXP from dying repeatedly. Ako apologized to Rusian, while Schwein and Apricot laughed at her. After the battle, they gathered at the bar. Kyo said she would log off since she had things to take care of at school the next morning. She also joked that if they saw her at school, they could call her master as much as they wanted. Schwein refused outright. Ako also wanted to leave to take a bath and go to sleep. Hearing the word bath, Rusian imagined something. Schwein teased him, asking what he was thinking about. Schwein then told Ako not to forget to wash off her sweat in the tub. Suddenly, Rusian said that Ako probably didn't even sweat because she wasn't a pig like Schwein. Schwein got angry at being called a pig. She warned Rusian that if he acted too familiar with her at school, she'd slice him up like a pig. Rusian promised not to say anything and to keep acting the same because the game and real life were separate. Schwein also reminded Rusian not to get too lovey-dovey with Ako, saying she'd feel bad if weird rumors about him started spreading. The next morning in class, Akane greeted Hideki. Hideki greeted her back, but then Akane suddenly questioned why he was talking to her. Hideki pointed out that Akane was the one acting weird. Nanako commented that Hideki and Akane seemed close. Akane scoffed, saying there was no way she could be close to a disgusting guy like him. Hideki finally gave up and said everything was his fault, and Akane walked away. So asked Hideki if he had just been rejected, but to him, it didn't matter since Hideki already had his irreplaceable 2D waifu. Hideki proudly said his wife was adorable. Just then, Ako appeared outside his classroom and called out to him as Rusian. So was confused, wondering who Rusian was. Ako quickly approached Hideki and greeted him using that name. Hideki turned away and told So that he didn't know her. Seeing no response, Ako moved closer and asked if Hideki wasn't feeling well. Hideki yelled at her to stop calling him that and demanded to know what she wanted. Ako instead mentioned that last night they had stayed together until late, shocking the entire class. Hideki quickly tried to explain that it wasn't what they were thinking. So asked what exactly Hideki and Ako's relationship was. Hideki pleaded with Ako not to answer that question, but Ako declared that Rusian, Hideki, was her beloved husband. Akane approached them, saying she had no idea about this Rusian thing, but told them to take their otaku talk outside. Hideki led Ako out, but Ako happily thanked Akane, calling her Schwein. She then excitedly pointed out that Shuain and Rusian were in the same class. Akane said she had no idea what Eiko was talking about and dragged her outside. Akane assumed Akane was mad because she hadn't used her full name, so she called her Shuin again. Akane screamed in frustration and Hideki tried to calm her down but accidentally also called her Shuin. Then Akane approached them and asked if the three of them knew each other. Akane immediately denied it, then quickly pulled Akane out of the classroom and told her to stop calling her Shuin. Once they were outside, Akane asked if she had done something wrong. Hideki explained that it was because she called Akane Shuin, and that she didn't seem to realize that it wasn't appropriate. Hideki clarified that Rusian and Shuin were their in-game names and told Akane to be more aware of the time and place. Akane responded by saying that her only friends were Rusian and Shuin. Hideki reiterated that the game world and the real world were different. Akane then questioned whether she and Shuin weren't friends just because they always played and chatted together. Akane didn't mean it that way, but her response made Akane sad. Akane suddenly realized that she and Rusian were nothing more than strangers who had no real connection at all, even though she loved him and had even married him. Overwhelmed by the realization, Eiko started crying. Akane and Hideki discussed how to handle the situation, and Hideki suggested just going along with it for now. Akane laughed and reassured Akane that she was an important member of their guild and also their friend. Akane, still crying, insisted that it was all a lie. However, Hideki told her that she was still Akane, and in the game, she was his beloved wife. Akane clarified that what they meant was that they just didn't want to use their in-game names in real life, especially at school, where Akane was known as someone who didn't play games. Akane then asked how she should address them. Akane told Akane to call her Akane, just like everyone else. Akane hesitated and asked if they were still friends, to which Akane reassured her that they were. Hideki then told Akane to call them Hideki. At first, Hideki addressed Akane by her last name, but Eiko requested that he call her by her first name instead. She added that if he refused, she would just keep calling him Rusian. Left with no choice, Hideki agreed. Hearing this, Eiko immediately hugged him, saying that this was exactly why she loved him so much. Akane then asked if she was allowed to talk to them at school. Akane said it was fine as long as it wasn't about online games. But Eiko refused, saying she had nothing else to talk about besides games. Akane suggested that she could talk about anything she wanted while they were playing. Akane also pointed out that, as her husband, Hideki should spend time with Akane when she was free. Akane then asked Hideki if he would spend time with her. Hideki agreed, but only on the condition that she wouldn't call him Rusian or talk about being his wife. Akane hugged Hideki again, saying he was truly on her side. Suddenly, their teacher, Yui, reminded them that class was about to start. The three of them quickly returned to their classroom. Later, Eiko told Hideki that she had made him a lunchbox and invited him to eat together. Hideki was surprised and asked why she did that. Akane simply replied that it was because Rusian was her husband. Akane teased Hideki, saying he was probably thinking the same thing she was. Hideki immediately countered, saying he already knew what Akane was thinking. Eiko just couldn't distinguish between the game world and real life. During the lunch break, the three of them went to the student council room to see Kyo and explain everything. Akane told Kyo that Eiko couldn't differentiate between the game world and reality and even went as far as making lunch for her husband. Kyo commented that making lunch for one's husband was normal if they had been together for a long time, fallen in love, and eventually gotten married. However, she also noted that in an online game, she wasn't sure if Akane had actually fallen in love with someone whose real name and face she didn't even know. Akane quickly denied this, explaining that she knew Rusian, they always chatted, and their hearts were connected. To her, it was a pure kind of love, more genuine than what ordinary people had. Kyo admitted that Akane had a point and noted that Akane truly loved Hideki for who he was. However, Hideki argued that everything happened inside a game, where appearances and stats were different, and where he was always paying attention to Akane. Of course, that would make Akane think about him more. Akane strongly disagreed, pointing out that sometimes she played without Rusian, but whenever that happened, everyone else would leave her behind. Rusian, on the other hand, was always by her side, no matter how many mistakes she made. Forgetting things and doing things, that's exactly why Akane loves Rusian so much. Akane sarcastically wished them a happy life together and was ready to leave. Hideki tried to stop her, but Akane just called him a maniac. Not willing to take that insult, Hideki started arguing with her. Curious, Eiko asked Kyo what a maniac was, and Kyo explained that it referred to a game-obsessed guy who was desperate to find a girl. Suddenly, Hideki proposed an idea they needed to change the way Akane thought. They had to help her understand that the game world and the real world were two separate things. Akane asked how they were supposed to do that, and Hideki explained that they needed to show her that Rusian in the game and Hideki in real life were two completely different entities. Kyo then suggested that Eiko should join an extracurricular club focused on modern communication through online gaming. She invited them all to visit the club room, where she would be the club president. The club members would be Hideki, Akane, and Ako, and their activities would mainly involve playing online games after school and meeting up during their free time. Akane and Hideki found the idea strange, but Eiko was completely amazed by Kyo's initiative. Akane wasn't interested and decided to go home, saying that to her, online gaming was just a hobby. Kyo challenged her by asking if she wasn't rejecting relationships because it would cut into her gaming time. She then pointed out that if Akane simply added 2 extra hours to her gaming time, she could increase her progress significantly. Akane insisted she wanted to live a normal student life at school. However, Kyo warned her that if she fell behind in level, Schwein wouldn't be able to play with him anymore. Intrigued, Hideki was drawn in by the high-performance gaming PCs designed specifically for online games. They kept pressuring Akane until she finally agreed to join, on the condition that she could use the computers however she wanted. Kyo then orchestrated all of this as a way to highlight the differences between the game world and real life. By playing the game while being physically together in the same room, the contrast between reality and the game would become more apparent. Ako, however, was skeptical and said she didn't think it would change anything. But Hideki argued that she was being too naive and this experience would break the illusion she had built around herself. In response, Ako declared that she would prove her love for Rusian was the purest love of all. That night, Hideki logged into the game again. Rusian was looking for the others, who still hadn't joined the party yet. Suddenly, he ran into a familiar face, the cat-eared girl character who had once rejected his confession of love.